my problem, I can't hide anything in my backyard because I don't have a backyard.
Yeah, you're one.
I've got 3 front rows.
I put a ton of gravel back in this.
From when you first get on, your second floor, you get KFC there, way at the end.
Well, maybe if I stall for a minute, I can just pull you back. So I just actually came in. Oh, sure. Nice.
And it says, battery dead, hallelujah. 6 hours. What's up, Virginia? Hey, everybody. Hi, I'm Virginia. Joe. Debbie. Okay, nice to meet you.
Okay, so we can go ahead and do the quick board meeting part. This is the last board meeting of the 2017-2018 board. Nothing to do with the annual meeting. We're going to do that for a few minutes here while people are getting signed in and stuff. And the only order of business is to talk with Joe about the lots on Kilcher.
Okay.
So, where are we on the lots on Kilcher? We were talking about some things.
So hopefully that answers all your questions.
Okay. So what we had asked Joe to do, communicated the board's questions, concerns, thoughts. We had had some discussions with Joe before, we're just talking about land. The board brought up when I sent an email out saying, hey, we're looking at selling the land, we're looking at getting some concrete work done in the neighborhood, we're looking at some money for the land. And the board came back with some questions about making sure that the property was going to be properly developed, that we had a plan for it, that houses were going to go there, that, what was the other stuff that we had that came up? You remember off the top of their head?
Yeah, there were a few questions we were thinking about
Pricing
forwarding
and
to
just,
it.
and for some reason.
Yeah, we were thinking about forwarding to a lawyer, just to ask about our liability, right, from a fiduciary standpoint. And then
the appraisal.
And then also the appraiser.
And then the dues will be started.
Right, and the dues, yeah. When would dues start so that if for some reason something crazy happened, Joe can't sell the houses, which I don't think will ever be a problem, but I wanted to make sure we weren't going to get stuck with houses sitting there empty for 5 years and we're like, gosh, we probably can start collecting some dues right now. Are these both mine or one of these?
That's your personal one, those are your properties.
Gotcha, okay. So, I'm not looked. What other questions or thoughts?
So in answering the dues questions, I put in upon certificate of occupancy, whether they're sold or not.
Okay. Does anybody know legally what that means? I have no idea when a certificate of occupancy kicks in. Is that just once the house is
Once the
ready to
house
sell?
is finished, all the inspections are complete, the final inspector gets in there, and the house is ready for someone to occupy it. At that point, we start paying the dues.
Gotcha. And one of the things that came up was for anybody who is going to wonder later, one of the things that came up was what are the actual losses the association has taken, what versus what we're trying to make up. Obviously, one flip of the coin could be, why don't you guys go out there and try to get $1 million for the 2 pieces of land. The other side of it is we don't have anybody else that's interested in the land that we've found so far, and it's a specific. We need somebody that's going to come in and develop land that has homes on it that sunk and went through all those problems. So we were asked to get an appraisal just so we have an idea of what would even the thought process be. Did you hear anything back from him yet, Virginia?
No, I can't call him today.
I heard back from him.
Did you?
He sent an email over. Remember, initially he sent an email over saying, hey, these houses have property on them.
Yeah, and I sent that to
These
you.
properties have houses.
Right, so did he respond back to
He
that?
did. I
Thank you.
emailed, so that we got an email from the appraiser saying, hey, these houses, there's houses on these properties. I thought that's just doing property. Well, at that point, I emailed back, hey, what are we doing? A Google Earth check here? Are we just doing a overview? What are we doing exactly?
Right.
Is this a drive-by, type deal? So then he called me, and honestly, he wasn't the most pleasant person to deal with on the phone.
Okay.
he got a little snotty with me with his
Okay.
attitude of, well, I've just begun the process. I was like, well, okay, that's fine.
But there ain't any houses on it.
There's no houses there, they sunk.
So if he's in the process, he did
So I,
you see?
well, no, he hadn't even done anything yet. He
Exactly.
had just quickly looked up the stuff on the website. So he hadn't gone too deep into it. He said he might have to renegotiate his fee, and I was like, okay, well, let me know.
Right, so
Never
nothing
heard,
else?
never heard back from
But
him.
if he hasn't done anything, why is
Well,
he
then-
negotiating?
Right, there's no reason.
Well, he should be lowering it,
Well, then
because
don't-
there's no, there's
Right.
no dwelling.
And with the new information that the
I've got
houses
a
were
second
there.
person.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
might be you need
Yeah.
to look
You
at
know
the second
me.
person. Yeah.
I have a backup.
And the only reason we were getting the appraisal was just so we could say to the community, look, we had the land looked at, and
Yes.
most likely what we expect is to say, well, if you had everything in the perfect bubble, that land would sell under this, but it's not gonna do that because you can't build a home there right now. And there's no,
Improvements to the property.
Joe's taking on a risk, knowing that he's pretty darn sure that he can go in there and do what he can do, but there's always a possibility. Right, the ground stabilization. But there's always that very remote possibility that can't be ever fixed. So he's recognizing that risk. So I think that's something that we're taking into account for anybody who wonders later why we didn't.
Yeah, and I didn't think, and the reason we brought that up is it wasn't our feeling that we weren't getting proper value for the properties, because we just have a fiduciary responsibility in the community, and I know that question's gonna get asked by someone.
Yeah.
So we wanted to have it answered up front, so people didn't throw tomatoes at our house.
Yeah.
At Rob's place.
Well, we've got to remember, we've got to put money in to make the lots buildable.
Yeah, and that's the exact point that we were trying to make it.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's the board's responsibility, nor do I think it's the HOA's to come out of this with a huge profit. That's not what this is about. We need to make sure that the community is whole.
And then you do the dues, the due revenue.
Right, and we quit paying taxes.
Right, which is a key point. We did have several other people who said, hey, we'd like to buy those lots and make them our side yard or something, and there's no dues come in from that. And our goal as a board, I think, should be to get the dues flowing back in
That's
there.
$1,200 a year in dues.
Yeah.
For a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not 50.
$600.
That's why, right?
So we're looking at recouping long-term losses. Same thing we've always done.
And to maintain the value of the community. That's what we do.
Looking at that, what, if any other questions do we need to answer?
So are you planning on doing the sampling in the next couple of weeks then already, just to find out what's going on with it?
Yeah, I've moved Summit to the middle of July. They haven't given me a specific date yet, but the middle of July. So next week.
And then after that, you'll know for sure if you're gonna be able to do it or not, whether or not they'll
Yeah, we're
let you.
99.9% sure we can do it.
That's the, because we'll have to just put something in there, which is why we want to talk to the attorney, so if you got everything settled, but now,
Yeah.
just to put something in, like, if for some reason you can't bill it, just for us getting the properties back, so it gets off your hands and you're not stuck with it if it's not buildable. So just putting something where you're protected and we're protected, if for some reason you can't build on it, that way you're not stuck with the property.
Right.
You said concrete starts at any time after the closing of the land?
closing of the lot.
Closing
The lots
of
goes
Okay,
together.
okay,
Yeah, so that'd be the pool and that sidewalk.
Right.
okay.
Because we had talked about making sure that we had some start dates and things, so that if somebody in the community says, well, that's all well and good, you're gonna get this concrete work done 5 years from now, no,
Right.
we got it. He's ready to start work on this.
Do you have a general timeline of how long it would take once you actually start doing the sort of remediation and everything?
Well, I gave us 12 months here, but we're definitely done soon.
That's why I have no idea how long it would take, that's what I figured.
So
That's why.
I have a very important question, if I want to hold after they do this, pertaining to this, but I want it to be after everybody's done.
You want to say that again?
I have a very important question.
Oh, we'll have
Okay,
a
what is
board
this?
meeting afterwards.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's something that's not, shouldn't be.
Right, right,
Yes, it's more.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
okay,
Any other questions that we need to address with that? And obviously what we're gonna do is, we're gonna run that, we gotta get the appraisal in place, and we're gonna run that through the association attorney, so hopefully get it done quickly. That part should be very quick.
I would think so.
So we have an attorney sitting around.
yes.
So are you going to use your attorney to close, or you want to use my attorney to close?
For closing,
Or
I
you want to
think-
both, you want to both to work on it? So you've
Well,
got
we
your
can use
side,
his attorney, I think, for
so
closing.
you've got your side protected, and we've got our side
Well, we
protected.
have it quick claim.
Yeah, I think the closing, if you wanna use your attorney for that, looking at quick claim, it'll be easier. right? And
Yeah.
then,
I mean, it's just a final quick like that, so it's.
Yeah, right, yeah. I've already started it with them, I sent you that paper.
Right.
So once I get signed, I can send it, then we can start.
all we'll do
Start
is,
doing the title
we'll run the language through our attorney real quick, of what we should have in that note, and just make sure that we've got everything covered on both sides, so it's a fair deal from both sides. And then
Yeah.
good, so hopefully we get that done very, very quick, 'cause I know you're ready to get things started, and you've also got, you're going out of town, aren't you?
You go on vacation in the middle of August, so if we don't close before, we'll start after.
I don't think there's any problem with it. Nice. Where you guys going?
Not west.
Portland, starting in Portland and
Oh,
Columbia
yeah.
River and all
Ending up in
that
Utah.
hiking. Yeah.
I wanna- You guys stay and do this.
Yeah, I think as soon as we get an appraisal and we have our attorney look at things, I would support it. I would come back negative there.
Any other thoughts, concerns, questions that can be passed on to the next year's board?
Did we get him whatever we talked about at that other meeting where it was sidewalk?
Yeah, that was actually the agreed upon deal,
Okay.
walking in the door. Yeah, the amounts and everything was sidewalk and the pool concrete, which we had already pulled bids on the sidewalk. His bid was actually the best bid we had ever seen. So he had already
You
outbid.
been enough money on the table?
You left money on the table. That's good.
Hate it when
But then
that
again, you're
happens.
making it on the other side. Yeah, had we been solely going to you and saying, hey, can you do some concrete? So the good side is, for anybody who's looking for concrete work in the neighborhood, I know who to go to. Yeah. But yeah, no, but that's the good side of it. We did get a few people out of that worked out. So I know the bids were good. And then, the $2,000 beyond that to help us money back from the lost tax.
Right. That's it.
All right. Gutters.
Yes.
That is scheduled for,
The 18th?
I think it got pushed back to the 26th.
Oh, great, great.
So we got a little bit of time on that,
Okay.
assuming we're on the
I
board.
just want to make, yeah.
If
so-
not, good
No.
news to the new board.
Yes. Thank you.
So far, I've had no change from them as far as everything's on track.
So
They-
that's
the heights,
the correct
everything's
price?
good, that's the price. So unless they, it's $3,200, which originally we were looking at $6,000.
Yeah, that's
And,
great.
and the highest bid would have been 8,000.
So what we're talking about, just to be specific so that anybody wants to know, we're talking about having the townhome gutters cleaned. We just got the pressure washing done.
Yeah.
The gutters are supposed to be done. What was the total on the pressure washing? Do you remember? It was like 8,000?
8,000.
Something like that, which is
With,
like,
with the pool.
That pressure wash guy never called me back. He's
With the
supposed to come to
pool.
my house when he was
I don't know
there.
what, I don't know what happened there because we had a very competitive bid out of him too. So he's done it, he did it last year too, didn't he?
Yeah. He
Yeah.
ain't going there? Oh. I'll have him.
He knows the guy.
Yes.
Tell him to give me a call.
He just did 2 houses on mine and another house on the street.
Did you hear?
Yeah, so I'm gonna have him come back to you.
Tell him to call me.
Okay, I will.
Because our one side is gross.
Yes,
and I-
look, I did see that.
Boy, he does residential, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because he said he would give me a better price if he did it
Yes.
while he was doing the townhouse.
So
So he
maybe
never called me when I was doing
maybe
the
what we need to
townhouse.
do is push his information out to the community. 'Cause I know there's a lot of people
He's-
always.
I mean,
he's
he's
gonna.
great.
I know he did competitive bids for us on the town hall.
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
I think
He's
with me, he
really
said
good.
it'd be 300, but he could go lower than that if there
Yeah.
were.
That's the
like,
last bid I got,
we're doing.
300.
And pretty much everyone I talked to has been around 300.
Email with us here.
It's an all-day.
Thank you very much for coming out. and
Thank you,
talking.
thanks, man.
Hey.
Appreciate it.
Listen.
Great time, man.
Thanks for your time.
Look, I'm gonna say, he's board member, you know. we
Thanks,
got-
ma'am.
I'm gonna tell him he's board member, you know, we got. That's how, I got you, don't worry.
Okay.
So going forward with, we got the town hall
What's
done,
going?
we got that figured out. Any other last minute business with this?
Do you know what the status of the landscaping is as far as contract?
Glad you asked. Is Ellie here?
She is, right there.
Where you hiding, Ellie? Would you come up and
Has he
talk
left?
to everybody up here about the landscaping, where we are with things?
Hey, they finally trimmed the bushes by the visitor
Too far
parking.
in at this part.
That's great, thanks. Landscape representative.
Way too far in at this point to get
Yes,
out.
yes.
So Ellie,
great.
for anybody who doesn't know
I'm
Ellie,
Gigi.
Ellie's taking
Nice to
over.
meet you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Real nice, Sid. Real nice.
Okay, nice to meet you.
Oh
Sorry
my
you
gosh,
had this experience
that is
out
so
there.
funny. You've met Sid.
Just briefly.
Oh my gosh.
We don't know each other
At all.
So Ellie has taken over I'm sorry, not town hall, landscaping,
Oh,
the
boy.
second phase.
I love it.
Rob recruited.
Okay, okay.
I just like him.
I don't know if it was really
Okay.
Funneling, funnel.
Yeah, it was completely.
A little bit of bullying and something.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Hey,
Yeah,
sure.
she was out there
Wherever I can help.
today getting information
Yeah.
and everything. So basically her approach has been to first go after US Lawns and nail them down and say, what is it exactly you do here?
Right.
And then they were like, what were the landscaping people? And she's like, right, but what is it you do here? So you like do the landscaping or like look at the landscaping? So she's been big on that. And then she's also been looking at whether or not what we're currently paying them is competitive. And I don't know how far you've gotten into that, if you feel comfortable divulging too much of that at this point.
I mean, I haven't gotten any new pricing yet, if that's what your question is, but, I've had two other companies come out and just kind of driven around the property and explain kind of what US Lawns is doing.
What they're not.
What they're not doing and kind of some of the issues that, have, like, there's always seems to be some sort of issue with, grass not being in one area, and it just takes forever for them to do it or whatnot, so. But I should have something by the end of this week.
And then when you get a chance,
Yep.
I've been haunted by townhomes.
Yeah.
Some things, yeah. So there's
Oh.
some things, pine straws and some overgrowth. So I know exactly what spots they're talking about, so you can walk.
That
They're
sounds good.
supposed to be doing, I know they did bush trimming because I actually got a complaint about how one of the bushes got trimmed and I sent that to US Lawn. But I know that they just did some trimming over there, so have they got the pine needles yet, do you know?
No.
There's some trees in the back of the townhomes that.
Did we ever get the bid finally in hand?
Yes,
And then that's when you
But-
question the bid because the
right.
amount. That's right, I knew, okay.
because it just.
Bring them up to speed on
Well,
that.
it honestly
I
just
forgot.
seems like a ridiculous amount for the space. I mean, and the first guy that I talked to, the first landscaping guy that I talked to said 700 bales of pine straw is just for the, or at least for the space that I showed him, which is what we drove around and looked at that space. He said it's probably more like 400
Wow.
bales, not 700 twice a year, just maybe 400 twice a year. But he even said you could possibly even just do it once a year, or maybe do mulch. If you have, mulch is going to be a little bit more expensive, but
You have to do it once a year.
you only have to do it once a year. So they're both going to give me bids on that too. But I didn't know if you wanted to move forward with the US Lawns code.
No, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
No, if we can get it in a reasonable amount of time, over 6, 8 weeks, and we can get it cheaper, which I think it's worth, we're going this long, as long as the townhomes aren't up in arms about pine straw. It's starting, I looked at it the other day,
No, it's not about pine
it's starting to
straw.
deteriorate.
But you can tell, like when I was walking around, for the, pressure washing, you can tell where they skimmed. You can tell where they did not put pine needles down. You can tell exactly on the sides where you can't see visibly, you can see the sides of them by people's doors.
Right.
What they did not do. And you can tell, I can tell it was not done.
Right.
So that's where you get your complaints from. So there's some spots. And then like with the trimming, they're not trimming, cause I didn't even know there was trees behind some of the townhomes, like behind
Towards
some.
Allendale.
So, yeah, there's some
Okay.
behind the trees and stuff that's never been trimmed. So, yeah, it's overgrown behind these houses.
Can you show me where that's at?
And I
Yeah.
got it, yeah. So I know
I
exactly
want to
what
be
it
able to,
is. Right.
Get that.
Right.
Communicate that, yes, so that's why I
that
said.
way, if,
Yeah.
there is a transition at some point, everybody's on the same
And
page
we'll switch
about what needs
information,
to be done.
if I'm here.
Yeah, okay.
This is why we need a landscaping authority.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Somebody's so much better. So much, and I totally forgot because my brain goes in 4 billion different places, and it's why I really appreciate you taking on this role because it's too much to keep up with everything around you. So taking on that landscaping role.
Yeah, having a single mind function on landscaping is important.
something needs to be beat into the ground. And I think that's gonna happen also with the pool going forward next year, so, we'll get onto that. So we're, into the 6:35 timeframe, so we're good. You were dismissed for now. We'll start dismissing people, bringing them out. Thank you for your time.
Thank
I'm
you.
not gonna be able to stay up here with the big boys.
Well,
You won't like it up here in a minute.
No, yeah, in a minute, you're gonna be running.
When the questions start coming, it's no fun.
Yeah, you better run.
I got you.
Everybody that is here tonight, thank you very much for coming. And I know some people are going to watch later on YouTube. I'm Rob. I'm the current president of the Homeowners Association. Virginia, she's the vice president. Sid is treasurer. Eric is standing in as just one of the board members. He's not an officer. And then Sandy, who's the secretary, is not here tonight. She was ill. She wanted to be here. She's not going to be running again this year, but she still wanted to be here, so she apologizes for not making it. Thank you for coming tonight. Everybody that's here represents either somebody who is voting or if you just came because you're a town resident and you live here and you want to have some input, we appreciate that too. We need you here, we need your proxies, we need your input. What we're going to do, we've just finished up the last board meeting that we needed to do a couple little final pieces of business, and now that that's done, we're going to go ahead and do the annual meeting. For the annual meeting, essentially it is the Sid show. Everybody's favorite treasurer, Sid. I told him I was going to do that. So Sid is going to go through and talk about numbers, which is really what matters. And that's the main thing that the board's always focused on is how many dollars and cents do we have. So Sid's going to give you some updates on that. Try to work in, I'm sure there's a few questions related to budget stuff. We'll try to work that in real fast. And then we'll get straight into the election so we can get that taken care of. Before I do that, is there anybody here tonight who's going to nominate somebody or who would like to be nominated to run for the board tonight? Anybody from the floor? If you change your mind as we move forward, just let Daisy know in the back. She'll take care of it. That way you can slip over and whisper in her ear and she'll take care of it. Sid, turn it over to you.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. Thank everybody for coming. We appreciate the time you guys spend coming over here. I know everybody's busy during the week, and taking an hour out of your time is important for the community. What I want to do for you tonight is just take you through our budget, where we're 6 months into the year, which really gives us a pretty good picture of where we're going to be at the end of the year. And then we also had a new reserve study done this year that will give us an idea of what we need to have in reserves in order to maintain and keep up the responsibilities that the HOA has for maintenance of the community. Landscaping, sidewalks, the townhomes that we have to maintain, the exteriors of the townhomes and those types of things. So we had a new reserve study done this year that told us how much we need to schedule to put in every year, and then what big projects we can anticipate coming up for the next 30 years and what we'll need to expend in those years. So I'll take you through both those processes. If anybody has any questions, please ask them when you have them. I may or may not, if it's a detailed question about an expenditure, I may or may not have that detail available to me right now, but I can always get it for you. Or if it's just a general question, I'll try to answer it or make something up. But here's where we set so far for the year. This is our income side. Our general assessments, we had budgeted roughly $248,000 for a year's worth of assessments. We're 6 months in, so we've got about $124,000, and our actual's $129,000, and that's just the difference in where we're at in the billing cycle. The fact that we've just had a second billing, where we're coming in, how many's been paid and how many haven't been paid. So we're pretty close on our general assessments. We've got some legal reimbursement that we had to pay out that actually comes out as a debit out of the income side. A little late fee income. We don't budget for late fee income because honestly, we don't want late fee income. We don't want people to be late and have to pay a penalty on their late fees. So we normally don't budget for that. It's usually less than $1,000 a year. So we've got a little $548 there. We also have some interest on our reserves. We're at about 287, so we're about twice there. We're carrying a good reserve, and I'll go through the budgeted to be for general income for the year. So then we move to the expense side. This is where about a given year for particular processes. The big expenditures are the repairs either on the townhomes, on the pool, or any of the public property that we have. There's insurance and there's taxes. Those are the big expenditures, but we got some miscellaneous items that we expend on too. Miscellaneous maintenance and repairs, we budgeted about $10,000 for that this year. We're through 6 months, so I just basically, for our budget, I just divide 10,000 by 12 and multiply by 6 to come up to 5,000. We've actually spent about 14,000. The reason for that is we've got several expenditures on our townhomes that will eventually we'll withdraw from reserves to take care of if at the end of the year it looks like we need to pull money out of reserves to do that. We're actually budgeted to spend $27,000 out of reserves this year. We normally don't take money out of reserves just whenever we need it. We've got enough of a cash reserve that we can pull directly from cash, and then at the end of the year we'll see where we need to be to make things even, and then we'll pull money from reserves or put money into reserves to make that all balance out. But we've done pressure washing on the townhomes. We're getting ready to do the gutter work on the townhomes and those types of things. So that's where some of the miscellaneous maintenance and repairs. Sorry, was there a question? Okay. We've had a few miscellaneous maintenance repairs on the pool house. We never know what that's going to be. We budget $4,000 a year. We've only spent about $500 this year on it, so we're under a little bit on that. We haven't had any electrical repairs. Electricity is the only account that's really bothering me this year is electricity. Normally how I do our budget from year to year, and I've been the treasurer for 3 years, so I know how it flows from year to year, is I take last year's expenditures and I up them by some cost of living expense, and usually that's some REIT mention or some type of publicized cost of living. And that last year was about 3%. So I took last year's electrical expenditures and I increased them by 3%. That's what I budgeted this year. And that came to about $31,000. And we're on par right now to spend about $35,000 in our electrical costs. So our electrical cost went up more than we anticipated. Duke Power, they're pretty much the only game in town. They get to charge you what they want. But we'll keep a close eye on that. Basically, the electricity that we spend is what we spend at the pool, and then of course we pay for all the street lights in the community. Those are our only two expenditures, but we're still looking at about $35,000 for the year. But we'll keep an eye on that account. Irrigation system, we hadn't had to spend anything on that. Our landscape contract, we're pretty close to budget on that. We budget $30,000. That's what our contract is for, $31,000 actually. And we're pretty close to that through June of this year. Landscape supplies, we haven't really spent anything on landscape supplies yet this year, but that pays for things outside of what the landscapers do. All the labor's paid for, but if we put pine straw out or we put flowers out, that comes out of the landscape supplies account. And we will be doing some of that work over the next month and a half, so we'll see that come out in July and August. We budgeted $15,000 for landscape upkeep. Landscaping is one of those things, it's one of the things you have to do. It bothers me to spend a lot of money on landscaping, but if we don't maintain the landscape, the value of the community goes down and our houses aren't worth as much. And in my opinion, that's the board's primary function, is to maintain the value and the quality of the community and the quality of life in the community. So anything we do, any money we spend, we criticize it under those rules. Does this add value to the community? Does this maintain value of the home? Can we sell our home for the same amount or more than we paid for it? That's what we're looking to try to maintain on the board. Pool repairs and upgrades, we really haven't had any repairs to the actual pool. It's just been the pool house and that this year. Pool contract, that's $15,000 a year. We've spent $9,000, but we don't pay that pool contract the last 3 months of the year, so that'll all balance out eventually. Pool supplies, we're close to budget there. Trash removal, we're a little over on trash removal, but that's because we switched our townhome trash removal. As many of you know, mid-year, a few months ago, we went from the big dumpsters to the individual trash removal on the townhomes. I think, Rob, that's working out a lot better for everybody concerned. Yeah, we don't have the constant overcrowding and the overstuffing of the trash bins. Honestly, they were a sight. You could smell them in the community. So we made the decision to get out of those. It was a little more expensive, but not much more, and I think the quality of it's really made a difference. And then water and sewer, the water we pay is for the pool. We'll take in, that bill will come due July, August is the majority, and then also the irrigation. The reason it's behind is our irrigation system was broken for a while this year. And then we also haven't paid for the majority of the water on the pool. But we should be, that should be somewhere around $7,000 or $8,000 before the year's out. Then our administrative expenses, we have accounting expense. Our accounting expense is what we pay for to have our audit done. And we paid for an audit earlier in the year. We will budget next year for another audit. We're required by the covenants to have an audit done, an exterior third-party audit done every year. And the last 3 have come back fine. I fully anticipate when we do one this year, it will come back fine as well. Insurance expense, we're a little bit behind on insurance expense, which is good. We budget almost $20,000 for insurance expense every year. We're at about $7,900. I anticipate that will end up somewhere around $19,000 or $20,000 before the year's out though. Legal expenses, we have had some legal expenses. As some of you know, there was a lawsuit against the community for one of the houses in the community. I can't go into it any more than that, but part of the legal expense and part of our insurance expenses are expended to cover the legal representation that we have to have for that. So that's what the legal expense. If you guys want more of an update about that particular issue, Rob is the expert on that one and can answer your questions on that one. Management fees, we're right on budget for management fees, as we should be, because we know what that number is exactly. Miscellaneous administrative expenses, that's for the flyers, the mailings and everything we do. We budget about $4,500 a year for that, and we're a little behind on that at $1,600. We haven't had any social expense so far. We'd like to get a more dynamic social committee so that we can have maybe some community things, Oktoberfest or a cookout at the pool or some kind of holiday celebration, Christmas, Easter, but we haven't had any expenditures for that this year. We budget about $2,500 for those every year. Taxes have been really expensive this year, and the reason for that is we've taken on responsibility for the 2 empty lots in the community. As you all know, 2 of those lots were damaged. They weren't able to maintain the structures that were on them. They were washing out, so they had to tear those homes down. Those people had to foreclose and sell their homes, or actually just get foreclosed on for the homes. The property came back to the community, so we take responsibility for that, so we have to pay taxes for that. There was also a portion of the community that was had taxes paid on, and a portion of the public property, mainly because it was billed to somebody else. We never actually received taxes for that. Somebody finally tracked that down, so we had to pay 4 years back taxes on that small piece of property. So that's why our taxes, normally we spend about $2,000 a year on taxes. This year they're going to be more like $4,500, but that's because of that back taxes that we had to pay. As you all know, it's not the county's responsibility to make sure you pay your taxes. Doesn't matter whether they bill you correctly or not. If you own the property, you owe taxes on it. It's your responsibility to make sure. So that got missed, but we did pay back taxes on that this year, but that expense will go away next year. We paid for the property reserve study. We budgeted $1,500 or $3,000. We got that for a lot less than that, thanks to our management company, Daisy. Appreciate that. And we paid $1,300 for that reserve study, and I'll go over that with you here in a moment. Bad debt expense, we budget about $500. We're at about $1,142. Bad debt expense is oftentimes when we forgive late fees on people, or we're working a deal with somebody on a foreclosure, or not really a foreclosure, but some kind of payment option where they're very far behind on their HOA dues. Some of those fees get forgiven, and we have to charge that somewhere, and that gets charged a bad debt expense. And then our telephone, which is really the Wi-Fi at the pool, and that's what we pay for the telephone. So for the year, our total expenses budgeted are $90,592. We're at $90,000, so we're right. And now, as you know, individual line items are up and down, but we're right on for our total expenditures for the year. And then our balance, our delinquency balance is $8,600, which means that $8,600 is owed to the community from our neighbors who haven't paid their dues over time. We like to keep that under $10,000. I think $8,600 is a pretty good number. As far as I remember, it's never been less than $5,000, and sometimes, as you can see, sometimes it gets higher, around $14,000. I don't remember what the national average is, but it's way above $8,000 for a community. So we're in pretty good shape on our delinquency dues. And then for our reserve studies, for our reserve account, we had targeted $335,000 for beginning of year balance. That's what our last reserve study told us to have in. So we, at the end of the year, or actually a couple months into this year, we moved some money out of cash into our reserve to bring that balance up to where it needs to be. And then our end of year target is $375,000, and we have budgeted to spend $27,000 out of reserves this year. So we'll need, that's $40,000 that we need to put in, plus $20,000 we need to expend. So our fund requirement for the end of the year will be $67,000. So that's what, at the end of the year, after we've done all of our expenditures, we look at what our cash reserves are, how much we spent, how much we took in. We transfer the balance into reserves to balance it for next year. And that's what the budget's all about, is to make sure we have that $67,000 at the end of the year to put into reserves. Any questions on the budget before I move to the reserve study? Okay. The signs? Did we
Yeah.
purchase the signs? Yeah, we have them.
We do have them. We've not put them together and put them up yet. We need some people to help us get that done.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We have them, we just haven't put them up. What's that? Yeah, they were
last
purchased
year.
in December, and it took a while to get them. Then once we got them, they're actually sitting up at the pool house, boxed up, waiting to be put out. And that's volunteers. We need some volunteers to do it. Nobody's. I can't hear that. What's that? Okay.
What are those signs are for, just to
This is the entry
General
signs.
announcement.
let the community
Yeah.
know what's going on?
Yeah, the
Okay.
community board, that kind of thing, that tells you as you drive in and out of the neighborhood, what's going on in the neighborhood, that kind of thing. So, yeah, we'll try to get some volunteers together eventually, dig some holes and put them up. And I know we've got a couple of guys who can do it, it's just coordinating schedules, so. You made the mistake of volunteering, so you're in.
Any other questions? Okay, I will go over the reserve study. Again, we don't have to, I don't think we are required to have reserve studies done on any periodic timetable, but we did have one done back in 2013. And we felt like after 5 years, it was time to have another reserve study done. We don't want to get too far out of contact with what current prices are. So what a reserve study is somebody who's an expert on the upkeep of communities, people that do this for a living, come in and they look at the community and they say, okay, you're going to have to do this. You're going to have to repave your parking lots in the townhomes in 10 years, and that's going to cost you this much. You're going to have to put a new roof on all the townhomes in 12 years, and that's going to cost you this much. They add all that together, and then they determine, okay, you're going to need a balance in your reserves to be able to service all those expenditures of this much, and then it's up to us to determine how much we need to contribute to that reserve account to get there. So for this year, we got a new reserve account study, and they put us a beginning of year balance of 2018 at $253,000. Our original reserve study had us at $299,000, and as you remember, we're actually at $335,000, so we're a little ahead on our reserve account. But the gist of the reserve study is this red line is the expenditure or the contributions to reserve that the reserve study required for us to be able to get to the balance on our reserve account in the 30-year period of $867,000. That's where we needed to be on reserves in order to be able to service all that at the end of the 30-year period. The green line, get back down to that. The green line is what our original reserve study had us contributing on an annual basis. And then the blue line, the blue line was the original reserve study, and the green line was my compromise between the two. I wasn't really comfortable with the new reserve studies, this escalated contribution where we put all the burden 20 and 30 years out on contribution. I wanted a flatter line, and I wanted something a little closer to what we were already budgeting to put in. So I proposed that we do the green line, which has us contributing roughly on an annual basis about $70,000 a year. It increases gradually over a period of time, but it never gets much more than about $80,000. So for this year, we'll be putting in $70,000. That will be $40,000 that we have to actually put in, and then $27,000 that we have to pay out of the reserve account. So that's where we're going to be at the end of the year. We should be right at $398,000, right at $400,000 for our reserves after we contribute and after if we expend the $27,000. Now, just because it says we have to spend $27,000 out of reserves, we don't do that unless it's necessary. If we've got enough in cash to be able to cover that, then we do. Then we don't have to contribute as much to reserves, and we can keep the HOA dues down, which is what we did last year. We didn't have to spend as much last year out of reserves as we were budgeted, and we were able to hold the dues flat this year and not go up on them any at all. Okay, I know that's a lot of numbers. These are always available to you guys if you want them. Rob has them. If you can get in touch with me, I can send you our budget. None of this stuff is private. None of this stuff is secluded anywhere. It's all public information that you guys are welcome to take a look at if you want. You're welcome to stop by the house and ask me questions about it. If I can answer them, I will, or I'll dig up the answer for you if I can. So. Any questions on reserves? It's the end of the Sid show.
That's it? Right at 6:58, nailed it. All right. Let's see, so with that out of the way, we got everybody's here, that kind of thing. Any idea roughly the number we've got in attendance and in proxies?
Yes, we have 44 in proxies, 20 in person.
So we've got plenty.
30 for quorum, so you really don't have.
So we've got plenty for a quorum, so the meeting's official, we can have the meeting, we don't have to keep doing this in a repetitive Groundhog Day cycle for the next 4 or 5 months, trying to get them born in. What we'll do, okay, sorry. Saying that we have enough people in attendance to have a quorum, so we're covered for the quorum, so that means we can have the meeting, it's an official meeting. So what we'll do is, we'll introduce the people who are running for the board this year, and I'll call for nominations again. We'll start with Ellie, since you were the newest one there, so you have to run right here. So if you would stand up, let everybody know who you are, tell them why you're running for the board.
Hi, Ellie. Nice to meet everybody. I'm just running for the board just to help out in any way that I can. I have some background in landscaping, so I'm starting to do a little bit of investigation into the current landscaping contract that we have, and also getting some additional quotes from some new companies. So I should be getting some of that information together here in the next few weeks, and any other way that I can help out, y'all just let me know. Any questions? Ellie?
She's already on there.
Well, it's a really long last name. Ellie.
Is there anybody else, nominations from the floor? Ellie being new, we're just gonna make her stand up and announce herself and give her a little speech, because there's no way we're gonna let her get away with it. Without a good speech. The only other people running for the board this year are Sid, myself, Virginia, and Eric. So we're all the same people we were doing before. We'll give you time to chat with us at the end by speeding things up. Go ahead and let Daisy give an announcement for a motion from the floor.
I will do the legalese on this, as there are 5 people running for the board, and there are 5 positions open. Is there a motion to close nominations? Second, all in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, also with 5 positions open, 5 people running, is there a motion to accept those by acclamation?
Yes.
Assumes 5 people, 5 positions. Motion made, seconded, all in favor say aye. Any opposed,
Done.
say nay.
Wasted paper.
The 5 people are now officially on the board of directors, you can take your ballots and vote them up.
So
Or
for-
recycle, or recycle.
For anybody who didn't understand, and for anybody who's listening at home or listening later, just in case you know exactly what you're saying, I know I get confused on it all. There's only 5 people running the business and having an election, so you basically agree to that. So what that does is that speeds things up. That's the only business we have for the annual meeting itself. What we'll do is we're going to close the annual meeting, and we'll have some time here just kind of hanging out. So at this point, I'll motion to adjourn the meeting. The meeting is adjourned, doesn't need a second, so it's done and over with. So questions from you guys, things that we can talk about. You've got a new board member, she's going to handle a lot of landscaping stuff. Go ahead and throw it out.
The new trash pickup, is there any way we can get like a holiday schedule? The Lakewood
Yes.
it's been sitting out there, or, we put it out today and it's still there.
Yes, you can. Is it on the flyer that we put out originally? Because if it is, what I'll do is are you going to email blast that goes out, you get the emails from the association? I will email blast out again, the flyer, and then if it's not on there, I'll also include Carolina Disposal's website because they have their holiday schedule on there. And I'll put that in the thing too, so I should be able to cover you a couple of.
They normally pick up the day after
It's supposed to be
the
day
holiday,
after,
but they don't always. So I get where you're coming from.
So there's, yeah, and what'll happen is, since you got 2 pickups a week, they're gonna offset both of those by 1 day.
I
So
know.
is today Thursday? Today's Monday.
Today's Monday, they should have picked up today.
Yeah, maybe they're just running late, we'll see what happens when we get back. If they didn't pick up, let me know. And as a town homeowner, somebody who lives in the community, you have all the right in the world to call them and say, hey, my trash didn't get picked up, because you're paying your company. I'll make sure you got all that information. That's all another hand. Yeah. Plan for the empty lots, that's what we're discussing in the very beginning here. We have Joe, who has approached the board and said, hey, I'd like to develop those lots and put 2 houses on it, which is exactly what we want, because we want houses back there and we want dues coming back to the association.
And we want to quit paying taxes on the lots.
Yeah, we want to pay taxes on lots to the association. So that's the plan. He's got the company and the resources to do it. We've worked on essentially even negotiating out the cost of it. It's just a matter of looking at what are the laws and what we'd like to get back to the neighborhood. He happens to have a business that doing concrete work, so we talked to him about doing concrete work. Expanding the deck out in the grassy area, which is a mess right now. So why would not contribution money to the grassy area, it's a mess. Oh, okay. And obviously the sidewalk down on Capitol Street that everybody wishes to do a sidewalk. We're going to talk about that. So business areas, Joe essentially, I don't want to use less what it sounds good. He's going to come in with engineering company, figure out what occupations he wants to repair the ground there, and then using the magic of concrete flow, engineering background, he's going to fix those lots that come through with. He's going to buy the lot from us in exchange for some work and a little bit of money to make us whole on our original losses. Kilchurn, if you drive down Paddington and right on Kilchurn, if you go into the house, big open space. House.
That question, the lots portion, I'm sure that legally you'll have all the ducks in a row, but I know, from a real estate perspective, the fact that those houses will be. So is there gonna be some type of disclosure between the HOA and the individual buying the lot to make sure? Because I know, obviously, any lawyer, if somebody sues, they're gonna say sue everybody. And that's kind of, with those
We've already done
lots,
that.
is kind of where I see more of a chance of the HOA actually getting hurt.
Exactly why it's totally within the right. That's why we've been going back and forth, trying to make sure that we've got everything done. Obviously, the good side is really everything, each person knows this. However, we're not talking to that, just saying, hey, just so you know, these are the problems, and we're not going to
But at this point, have there been any tests?
No, it's about a week ago. So we have an engineering firm, that's going to do the design
I make an opinion or give a statement, attorney didn't tell me you couldn't say that, I might make that pay extra money. Other questions? Yes. Alan? So the question for anybody who can't hear is, she's asking about the town hall and stuff, is it just include?
What side she on? It depends on her grass type.
Bald spots and stuff. To some degree, that's covered within the contract, you'll see and stuff, but we would have to pay a specific, we have to come in and actually look at the area and say, "Hey, we got to fix this. There's probably something wrong here, we got bald spots, drainage, weeds, something like that." One of the things that we ran into last year was, we've not had anybody who was ever kind of handling it for a while. Fortunately, we've had the LJC stepping up, they obviously, this is a change in the next year. Now, fire ants are a totally separate thing. We're not contracted to take care of that because we get a lot of things. Well, yeah, and here's why. We do get a lot of things, questions about, I've got, I'm sorry, this is the way I got cockroaches. Well, it's out. Front here. Yeah, cockroaches in the door, the cockroaches are inside. One of them is outside. One of them is inside. But any of the bugs you see, bees, all that kind of stuff, that's nature. I can't even get into it. I'm not such especially with ants and things that people do. They will figure it out. So we won't take care of it unless there's some specific one. As far as trying to beautify and keep things maintained, that's not responsible. Is that weeds? Yeah. I never do timber dock. That might be the area where you say, the office area, off the side, mailbox and stuff like that. We can argument. Mailboxes might be a good area. Sidewalks are, yeah, now if that's along the edge of the holes and stuff, that's a little harder for us to get spot. Right. As you guys do what Super Bowl says, you guys do what it's not even a contract. Question is, was there a problem with one of the sewers? I know we had it, you're talking about the sewers over by the town hall, that's a big problem over there. We've had, so every one of those town halls that has that beautiful tree sitting there in the front little yard there, that is right over top of water lines. So, which is really awesome for the tree, because it's going to go straight down the water line and start destroying it and getting into it immediately. We can't just rip the trees out, because the county said you have to have a certain number of trees, so you're not gonna cut them down. Nothing you can put trees for or anything, you can't do the water lines obviously, so every once in a while we run into plumbing issues over there, which is usually somewhere between $3,000 and $6,000 in plumbing issues in town halls. Just part of the budget. Yeah, and depending on where it is, if it's, usually we'll get the word that, hey, you've had to plumb toilets twice, and we've had a guy come out, really stick the line, and say it's outside, it's between certain points of the roadway, and cars, and then the HOA takes care of it, so you'll see them usually once or twice a year, it seems like those should pop up, when we're out there digging up the ground or something, must have come through, if it's in the sidewalk area, it's a disaster, but unfortunately, it's just part of the land. Other questions? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
difficult thing with that. So the question essentially is, what are the rules for pool usage for your neighbors, your friends, and family, not neighbors, friends and family, your visitors that come up. So, no, we don't have any rules that specifically says you have to be present while your neighbors or your family is swimming. Because I can understand that, you know, grandma and grandpa live here, and when family comes into town, and now I gotta make a grandpa who never goes to the pool, but make my dad go to the pool because they think they're nuts. So, I don't wanna make that rule personally. I don't think any of the board has ever asked us to make that rule. It's also almost impossible to enforce because we would have to go around and somehow keep up with it. It's hard to get people not to put chairs in the pool. Again, there's a lot of people like that point one way. You don't care if you got a plastic bottle in the pool, guess what? Fix it. So getting people to follow the rules is frustrating. We don't have an attendant full time up there. When we do have an attendant, we're not doing an amazing job this year. Which is one of the things we've been talking about, of keeping the rules enforced. Sometimes when they do enforce the rules, they get yelled at. So questions and told they're wrong. So we go around and around with that. So we have rules. They're in the handbook. Download them off the website. Go on there and look. I think you're allowed to have 4 family members or 4 guests with you or people, but specifically telling you that you can't set them up to a pool outside and have no rule. Other questions? Yes. Hey, all right.
For the townhomes, is the
Shutter, the question is, for the townhomes, are the shutters in the budget to be painted this year? Somebody will honestly need it. Right now, I don't know, honestly, budget-wise. I know it's one of the this year to get on.
Look out, here I come.
We put it on last year, we got a lot of the pressure washing done. We got the pressure washing done again this year. We did pretty have the shutters done.
Exterior
We keep
painting,
those costs low enough.
part of that $27,000.
We can say, yeah, now we run a little ones, okay, there's a way. We don't think it's gonna cost, but I obviously haven't gotten that right. So, it's just like my wife wanted to do floors this week, I don't have a clue what floors cost. Now I know what floors cost, I know it's not much, the same thing, they have hands run out, so it's cost. So it is on our radar, but it's, I can't. Especially on the back. So the joke of that is, we did get it assessed 2 years ago when we planned to have it painted originally. They said, right now they need pressure wash, we had the pressure wash, got the pressure washing done, they need to be painted. I already know they need to be painted, there's no argument there, we had some, even when we had some caulking done on them and everything, and that was part of the project. Did you get this? Well, it was a 1-by-1 deal anyway, so we got charges, because A and G were around the caulking for us, so we got charges, they didn't work. So if it needs done again, we'll have that as part of the estimate that we get done.
What's your unit number?
Well, that's gonna happen when they come through and clear it off, because if they clean everything, you're gonna probably clear out the old caulk and garbage, and some knock off paint and stuff like that, which that's part of getting the truck to paint. Most likely the fall is when we'll say we're gonna do some painting and stuff like that, and it needs it, it's gonna need 2 coats. We gotta make sure we get somebody out there who can do it. Other questions?
Rob, a couple of questions.
Yes.
So I know you can't talk about this lawsuit, but if anybody wants to know how to find it, I'm happy to let you know. It's pretty easy to find. But what is our track record of the last 2 lawsuits? How much did we end up paying defending ourselves or the deductible for insurance if Home and Glenn end up paying anything, so that we know what we could potentially expect on this one? And then the second part of that is, have we budgeted for those amounts?
Okay, yes, we're talking about the last lawsuit. There's only one lawsuit that I can recall, right, unless I just.
It's just
There's
one.
just 2 lost homes, but only
It
one
was 2
lawsuit?
homes, that's right, 2 homes, 1 lawsuit, yeah, okay. I was thinking that, I don't want to say it was.
Yeah, okay, two homes.
Yeah, it was a joint lawsuit.
Yeah, so, those 2 homes, the final part of that was, first of all, the insurance company picked it up, so they took care of all the legal fees and expenses. What had happened in those homes, which could help answer some of the questions about the new lawsuits, is it said the same thing. The last thing that happened was 2 of the homes settled real bad on Kilcher. As they settled, structurally, they started to fall apart. They had to sue everybody. They sued the guy who delivered a bag of Quick Creek there, they sued the guy who sprayed the ground, they sued everybody. To include the HOA, one, because we're the homeowner association, if you don't sue us, everybody else is pointed us, and then everybody else walks away. So they sued everybody, the builders, the developers, everybody that they could. They sued us, and one of the things they said about those particular properties was there was a pipe that runs between your two homes, that's the drainage, and said they think that that could be the reason the homes are settling so bad. And we know that's not true because we had sampling done of the pool when we had the pool rebuilt. So we know what happened up there. It was organics and bad soil and did bad without filling it in. Also, any of us who were here at the time remember you could see a big hole in the filter and then they filled it with dirt. And they kind of, I think they stomped on it a couple times and they were like, dude, yeah, I mean, literally, that's how bad it seems like it was.
Wow.
So then they threw two houses on top of it, and surprise, surprise, it's not so bad you can take your hand and stick it between the cracks. It was terrible, and I really hated it for them because in the end, they basically got back the money they had in and lost all their equity. So anybody who's owned your home since the neighborhood was pretty much built, you've got about $60,000-$70,000 worth of equity, they lost all. So, what we took away from it though was, the insurance company paid $2,500 each for settlement. They came back and requested that the HOA also kick in $5,000, $2,500 each, and I said no. So they didn't get that. They got $2,500 each from the insurance, and they signed the properties over to us only after they were completely scraped clean the conditions in them. That's what I agreed to in order for them to get out of the dues, because just because their homes were gone, they went someplace and they started over, they still owe dues. We could still go back and go after them for the dues. So in order for them to get out and have to pay future dues, we agreed to go ahead and take those properties on. Loss-wise, it's hard to be totally sure on our estimates. We know that our insurance has gone up over the last couple of years. We've seen a rise of roughly $5,000.
Yeah, somewhere, it's about $4,800, I think, over the last 2 years it's gone up.
And we had a claim on our insurance. We had a claim on our insurance in, see if you guys recognize. We had a claim on our insurance back when there was a big storm a couple of years, maybe 2014, 2015. The town suffered some damage. They had some roof damage, things like that. We had estimates done on that. It was about $67,000 worth of damage. We got that taken care of. And then we had that other claim with the lawsuit. So we knew that our insurance was going to go up. We'd actually gone and talked about possibly looking at new insurance, maybe getting some bids, something like that, and then this new lawsuit came in. Not a good idea to switch insurance companies right now. However, we're sure that there are better deals out there for us. So right now, I don't think there's been any major change in the budget to account for any future losses. However, looking to the future, long term, I think once we get clear of this, we're going to be able to see a substantial savings if we go with new insurance. I don't know where we're going to go. Eastman paid a little teeny bit. They got our $2,500. The developer got a little bit, paid a little bit. There was some money out of the surety bond, I think, and they basically got it up to almost break even. They didn't completely break even. Some for both for his and paper parties. So, we offered even for them to try to do what we're doing, which is try to find somebody to develop land that could find it. Other questions, thoughts, concerns?
Just one other thing, is it possible to send out a reminder or something on next door, about dog walkers being a little more pretties, about like cleaning up after the dogs? It used to be, I know it's a county ordinance thing, you know, but is there a way to send out a reminder that it's getting pretty bad once a week or more to clean up other people's stuff on your property?
You're asking, okay, so I can answer the first part of that. Send that one on a repeat basis or something like that.
Well, I don't know about a repeat basis. Maybe it's time to, as a reminder, it hasn't seen anything in a while.
We
I
can
don't know,
send out-
what's the way we do it?
The easiest way for me to communicate with large groups of people is to put it on our Facebook page or Nextdoor page, and I can put it on our email list. I don't mind sending it out. I also keep in mind, there's a lot of stray animals around, so I know it's not just dogs. I mean, I've got stray dogs that I see coming in my yard, they have cameras, and I know it's nobody's dog. I know all the dogs that are everybody sees around. It's nobody's dog around here. I don't know where the heck the dog comes from, but it's not coming from the house. So keep that in mind, if there's animals like that. I don't know, your unfinished business. My unfinished business?
Now that you're elected again.
Yeah, so the unfinished business for the neighborhood. So one of the things that we've been trying to get better and better and find a way to, there's no better way to say it, I'll just be blunt like I always have. People suck at mowing their grass and cleaning their stuff and things like that. We all know it, there's no argument, probably everybody in here does a good job of it. I would say 90% of the neighborhood does a good job, 10% doesn't. And at times, it's not even the same thing. 10% is not good about pressure washing their homes, 10% is not good about mowing their grass, 10% is not good about fixing your mailboxes. I mean, seriously, you're standing there looking at your mailbox and it's leaning sideways, or it's this far off the ground, it needs to be fixed. So we need to go around and address those issues. I think that's gonna be a task that we need to come on and take care of this year. What's that? Townhome, well, yeah, townhome gutters, we'll make sure that that gets done. We'll make sure the painting gets done. That's one of the things that's on our list for the board. Getting through the lawsuit, we don't wanna hand off things in the middle of a lawsuit. What's that?
You want me to keep going?
Yeah, I was gonna say, anything else you guys can think of that are just some of the things that are on our mind. It's a lot of the exact same things people get mad about. One thing that's definitely not on my list is going around policing people's parking. I can't do anything about parking on the street, y'all. Cannot do anything about it. I know it's a big issue on Facebook and people were getting all mad and everything and taking pictures of people's vehicles. I cannot do anything at all about somebody who parks their car on the street. I can go and send them a letter like with anything else. I can send a letter, I can send a fine, I can send them the chain of complaints and stuff. But the frustrating part for anybody that comes to me, if you come to me and you say, Rob, my neighbor is doing X, Y, and Z, it's against the rules. And I say, okay, cool, I'll check it out. I go over and I look and I agree with you. And I say to the management company, you need to send a letter out to this person, let's start them on the process. And then you come back a week later and you're like, it's not fixed. I can't tell you, I sent them a letter, the rules are fine, they want to sue us, we'll sue with them. I can't tell you any of that. So the frustrating thing is, think about how long it takes to go through these lawsuits and stuff. And if we're in the middle of going back and forth with somebody about the fact that the fence needs to be staying, it hasn't stayed in years, and I'm not allowed to tell you about it. It's super frustrating when you're screaming at me, usually like this, so hold your keyboard. When you're doing this at your house about how I'm such a terrible person, I'm not doing my job, and I am trying to do my job, and I can't tell you, I'm doing everything I can for you guys. So it's frustrating. That's one of our big things is trying to address the landscape and stuff. Yeah, come on, that's well, I think that's the way to talk. So we've got a process in place which is in the handbook, which you can look up on our website. The process is essentially you make a complaint or we discover the complaint through an inspection. That goes back to the board who then examines it and says, okay, that's a violation, yeah, that's a problem. Wait a few days, go back out and look to see if it's still there. Because nothing's more frustrating than you haven't mowed your grass, you've been on vacation, you come back to mow your grass, you have letters on it, and you mail it out 3 days ago. So we're trying to avoid that, plus it's expensive to keep sending letters and stuff. Once we come back and go, okay, we saw this on the 1st, now we're back out here on the 14th doing a follow-up inspection, it's the same exact problem. Now we're gonna go ahead and send a letter saying, hey, we need to fix this. We're gonna give them 7 days in those cases to fix whatever it is. Now, if it's something major like your fence, it looks ragged, it needs stained, it needs fixed, it needs repairs, that's a big expense. So we understand, but what we need is communication with people. So when we send a letter, what we expect is somebody's gonna call the management company or us and say, hey Rob, God, it's gonna cost me $3,000 to fix that fence. I didn't even build the fence, I just moved in. What do you want me to do? I can't do this in 30 days, blah, blah, whatever we gave them. In which case, we're gonna say, okay, I'll go back to the board and tell them you need more time. What's your expected projection on getting that done? 2 months? Okay, cool, we got a plan. That doesn't happen though. Nobody communicates, they just get mad. Sometimes they do this and say that everybody's terrible, they're all against me, but we're just looking for some communication. So if we get that communication from somebody and they say, hey, I'm really sorry my lawnmower's broken and I can't mow the grass this week. I'm probably gonna drag my lawnmower over to their house, mow their lawn, shake their hand and say, no problem. Or somebody else will. You know, Paul Shelburne took it on himself to go down and mow Kilchurn for us because he knew it needed done. That's the kind of guy he was. So we appreciate that kind of stuff. But that's the general process. And then it goes from there to legal stuff and it gets really nasty. So it's the same thing with the homes that we've got homes that are in foreclosure with us, probably also with their bank because they haven't paid their dues in 2 years. It's just a long should be. Takes me, should be really, really hard. Is that? Homes in foreclosure, what do you got? 4 right now, I think, there was like 3. Was it 3 or 4 are with the attorneys right now? We've had some that have gone that process and figured their way out. Then usually, what we do, and Eric was asking because this was his first year on the board, he's spent a lot of time kind of getting, figuring out what's going on. This year, I expect Bill will jump in. Yeah, 4 days. We've had people who have gone in and out of struggles, and they've come back and said, hey, I'm trying to pay my way out of this, but it's $1,000 and 400 of these fees. What can I do? And we've forgiven some fees to help get them straightened out. We've done things in neighbors to try to fix it. Because that's just kind of who we are.
So what I put was, I'm sure grateful for all the work that you do out because it was I mean, it really is.
Well, I thank Rob all the time. It's not thanks.
The flip side of it is, I get awkward with things, and yes, so thank you, but, the reality of it is, and thank you for that, it truly is, I get a lot of things. It's usually kind of quiet off this side because they're not this kind of people, and I get it, and a lot of you are here present tonight. But, we all know that you guys support us, so we're all on beat our heads against the wall. We know you guys are out there and you support us, and we know that if you're mad, you're only mad about this issue, you're not mad about everything. So please communicate. If you know that the neighbor's mad about something, instead of letting them just get mad and ranting about things, have them come talk to us. Because a lot of people who get really mad at me on the internet have never once walked up and had a full conversation with me. And they rarely say anything like what they say on the internet to my face. They will not do it. And that's frustrating because I'm not a mean guy. So please encourage people to come talk to any one of us. All these guys have the same power and authority as me. And for the record, I should say, the duties and responsibilities of the president are to run this meeting right here, sign the document. So you all know and you go tell people. The board makes all the decisions. They tell me what I can and can't do. They give me a lot of leeway to make sure things get done in an expeditious way. But they're in charge just as much as I am. So, any other questions, thoughts, concerns? Yes.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely
All
am
the
doing
little
that.
secrets you find out.
Yes. Most definitely.
Good idea.
Oh, well, thank you.
See, here you go. He
All right,
volunteered.
I know, right?
You gotta
Everybody
jump.
heard that.
And the way I got Ellie was she stopped by to get something notarized, didn't you?
No,
Pool file, that's right.
Yeah.
Came by to get a pool file, and she made a mistake and said she'd help. So if you make a mistake and tell her you help, we'll get you involved, and I know a lot of people. If you don't have any more public questions you want to ask, obviously you can grab somebody from the board and ask us something you want to ask off to the side, and it's public and side stuff. We're gonna have a little conversation or whatever. We'll be here for a little bit longer. Thank you, everybody, for coming.